Welcome, dear listener, to another quiet journey with Science to Sleep By, where we unravel the hidden science of existence, not to overwhelm, but to soothe, to wonder, and perhaps, to drift into peaceful rest. Have you ever felt that time is slipping away too fast? That childhood summers stretched forever, yet adulthood weeks vanish in a blink? Tonight, we will solve that riddle. We'll explore the secret chemistry of time, why it feels different at different ages, how our brains measure its flow, and how we can learn to live in harmony with its slow, patient rhythm. When we think of the building blocks of the universe, our minds turn instinctively toward matter. Hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, the noble gases, the shimmering metals, the earthbound minerals, all arranged neatly in the periodic table, as though nature itself could be catalogued and ordered like books upon a library shelf. But if you pause for a moment, you'll notice something is missing, something invisible yet undeniably present, something that cannot be held, poured into a flask, or weighed upon a scale. That something is time. Like oxygen, we cannot breathe it in. Unlike water, we cannot drink it to quench our thirst. And yet, without time, none of these elements could ever interact. There would be no fire without time for oxygen to meet flame. There would be no life without time for cells to divide. There would be no universe as we know it, for stars are only born, live, and die within the flow of time's current. Time is not an element on the table of chemistry, but perhaps it is the quiet solvent in which all reactions dissolve. Consider how strange it is that we cannot see time. Light can be broken into colors. Air can be measured by its pressure and density. Sound can be captured in waves. But time remains elusive. We know it only by its fingerprints, by the way it shapes matter. A piece of fruit browning on the counter, a river carving its bed deeper, a wrinkle forming upon the skin, all of these are chemical stories, written slowly by the ink of time. We cannot touch the ink itself, only the marks it leaves behind. Scientists, of course, try to define time. In physics, it is described as a dimension, one woven into the very fabric of space. In chemistry, it is the rate at which reactions occur, the minutes a crystal needs to form, the years it takes for metal to rust, the fractions of seconds in which neurotransmitters leap across synapses in your brain. But definitions, however precise, never seem to fully capture its mystery. For when you and I sit quietly in the dark, time does not feel like mathematics. It feels like something soft or more fluid, as though it has moods and textures of its own. Time bends itself around our lives in ways that feel deeply personal. A minute waiting in pain can feel like an hour, while an hour lost in laughter can vanish like a dream. No other element behaves in this way. Oxygen does not feel heavier or lighter depending on our mood. Water does not seem to speed up or slow down based on our perception. Only time carries this strange duality. One part measurable, another part entirely psychological. Imagine a world without time. Imagine a universe where every particle is frozen in stillness, unable to react, unable to change. The candle wick would never burn, the waves would never crash, and the seed in the soil would never stretch toward the sun. Without time, chemistry itself could not exist, because chemistry is the art of change and change is the child of time. What fascinates me most is how we attempt to cage time. Humans invented clocks, calendars, sundials, and atomic measurements that divide a second in 2 billionths. We draw neat boxes around a thing that is not neat at all. Time is not obedient. It does not always match the numbers we give it. You have felt this yourself, when a week of grief feels like a century, or when a decade of life collapses into a single memory. To measure time is to count the waves on the surface of an endless ocean, while forgetting that beneath them, a deeper current flows, unseen. Children live differently with time. For a child, days stretch into vast landscapes. Summers feel like lifetimes. An afternoon waiting for a birthday cake can feel unbearably long, because each moment is wide, full of newness. As adults, the novelty fades, and time contracts, moving faster with each passing year. This is not because clocks have changed, but because our minds have. The invisible element reveals itself through perception, as though our brains are the vessels in which time distills its strange brew. even in the smallest reactions, time exerts its authority. A diamond is born not in a day, but across millions of years under unimaginable pressure. A star does not simply ignite, it gathers dust, gas, and gravity across eons before its first light shines. Yet in the laboratory, some reactions are so quick they escape the human eye. Explosions, sparks, the sudden leap of fire from a struck match, all these too are time, but compressed, condensed, unfolding in the blink of an eye. Both extremes belong to the same invisible element, the glacial patience of a mountain forming, and the violent immediacy of lightning striking. Both are written in the same chemical ink. There is also a gentleness to time, a softness that soothes if we let it. Think of water dripping from a cave ceiling, drop by drop, forming stalactites that hang like frozen chandeliers. The chemistry of each drop is simple: calcium carbonate, a little water. But given centuries, those tiny reactions sculpt cathedrals of stone. No artist works so patiently as time. No sculptor is so precise. And in this patience lies a lesson for us. For in our hurry, we often rage against time, wishing it would move faster or slower. But when we see what it creates, perhaps we understand why it moves at its own pace. On a more intimate scale, time moves within us. Every heartbeat is a rhythm of time, every breath a quiet metronome. The cells in your body divide according to a clock older than civilization, a circadian rhythm encoded in your DNA. Hormones rise and fall not randomly, but according to time's schedule. Even as you listen now, neurons are firing, carrying electrical impulses from one synapse to another in milliseconds, orchestrated by time's invisible baton. Your very awareness, your ability to perceive these words, is a performance conducted within the slow chemistry of time. There is an old saying that time heals all wounds. Perhaps this is true, not by magic, but by chemistry. The cells in your skin need time to knit themselves back together. The neurons in your brain need time to rewire after heartbreak. The hormones of stress, flooding your bloodstream, need time to ebb and dissolve. What we call healing is often just chemistry allowed to unfold at its natural pace, under the guidance of time, and still, we cannot grasp it. We live inside time as fish live in water, unable to step outside and look in. Perhaps that is why it feels so mysterious, because we cannot detach ourselves from it. We can study the stars, because we are not stars. We can study rocks, because we are not rocks. But time is something we are made of. Our lives are carved entirely within its flow. To study time is to look into a mirror that never stops shifting. So if time is not on the periodic table, perhaps it belongs on a deeper table, one that contains not only matter, but the conditions that make matter move, breathe, and change. Perhaps time is not an element at all, but the stage upon which all the elements perform their dance. Without it, hydrogen and oxygen would never meet to become water, and you and I would never sit here, quietly, listening to the slow heartbeat of the invisible element called time inside every human being, hidden beneath the skin and muscles. Behind the organs and blood vessels, there exists a quiet orchestra that never stops playing. This orchestra is not made of violins or flutes, but of cells and hormones, electrical signals, and tiny molecules. It is the body's inner clockwork, a rhythm older than language, older than cities, older even than our species itself. It is the ancient ticking of life. Unlike the mechanical ticking of a wristwatch, the body's clock does not run on gears or springs. It runs on chemistry. At the very center of the brain, in a tiny region called the hypothalamus, sits a cluster of nerve cells known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus. These cells are so small, you could fit thousands upon the tip of a pin, and yet, together, they perform a task so immense it borders on miraculous. They keep time. They measure the passage of day and night, and they coordinate the countless processes of the body into a symphony of order. From the moment of birth, we are bound to this clock. It is why newborn babies slowly learn to sleep and wake with the cycle of the sun. It is why we feel hunger at certain times of day, and why our energy rises in the morning, then wanes at night. Even if we were locked in a dark cave, cut off from clocks and calendars, our body would still drift toward a natural rhythm of roughly 24 hours. This is known as the circadian rhythm, the daily ebb and flow of our biology that moves in time with the turning of the earth. The rhythm is not perfect. Left completely on its own, the body's inner clock runs a little longer than a day, about 24 hours and some minutes. It is the sun itself, the rising and setting of light, that resets the rhythm and keeps us in harmony with the world outside. Light enters our eyes, striking specialized cells in the retina, and signals travel down the optic nerve, all the way to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This tells the brain, it is morning, or it is night. From there, the orchestra begins to play its symphony, each instrument of the body joining in at the proper time. Consider the hormone melatonin. As darkness falls, the pineal gland releases this gentle chemical messenger, guiding us into sleepiness. When morning comes, melatonin fades, and another hormone, cortisol, begins to rise. Cortisol is often called the stress hormone, but in its natural rhythm, it is not an enemy. It is a signal that wakes the body, increases alertness, and prepares us to face the day. Every cell, every organ, listens to these signals, adjusting their functions to the time of day. Even digestion is ruled by the clock. In the morning, when cortisol rises, your metabolism quickens, ready to break down food into energy. By late evening, the gut slows, not because it is weak, but because the inner clock is telling it to rest. The liver, too, works in cycles, processing toxins more efficiently at certain times than others. This is why doctors often say there are better times to take medicine, better times to eat, and even better times to exercise. The inner clock is not only about sleep, it is about the choreography of every system that keeps us alive. But the most delicate performance of all is the dance of sleep and wakefulness. During the day, as neurons fire and muscles contract, a chemical called adenosine builds up in the brain. Think of adenosine as a weight, slowly pressing upon you, drop by drop, as the hours pass. By evening, the weight is heavy, and you feel drowsy. When you sleep, adenosine levels fall, the weight is lifted, and you awaken renewed. This cycle of adenosine is called sleep pressure, and it interacts with the circadian rhythm like two intertwined melodies. One is the clock that tells you when night has arrived, and the other is the rising pressure that tells you it is time to rest. Together, they form the chemistry of sleep. What is striking is how fragile this harmony can be. When we ignore the signals of our inner clock, the orchestra stumbles, staying awake into the small hours, staring into the glow of artificial light. We trick the suprachiasmatic nucleus into thinking it is still day. The melatonin is silenced, the adenosine builds without relief, and we find ourselves restless, our sleep fractured. Jet lag is another example. When we leap across time zones, the inner clock lags behind, still playing the melody of the old rhythm. It takes days for light and chemistry to retune the orchestra to the new time, and yet, even with these disruptions, the clock continues, patient and persistent. There is a kind of grace in its resilience. Imagine how many years you have lived, how many nights you have slept, how many mornings you have woken, and each one has been guided by this hidden metronome inside your brain. You do not tell your heart when to beat faster in the morning, or your liver when to filter, or your stomach when to growl at noon. The body's inner clock does this for you, silently, reliably, like a caretaker watching over you while you move through your days. There are even smaller clocks within the body, scattered like pocket watches in every cell. These are molecular oscillators, tiny feedback loops in DNA and proteins that turn on and off with exquisite precision. They are synchronized by the master clock in the brain, but they also have their own rhythms. Your skin cells know when to prepare for repair, your muscles know when to store energy, your immune system knows when to rise and defend. You are not just one clock, but thousands, each keeping time in harmony with the others. Scientists have studied animals that live without sunlight, creatures deep in caves or at the bottom of the ocean, and even there, the clocks persist. Life itself seems to carry an instinct for rhythm, as though time is not simply outside us, but woven into our very biology. This is why shift work, irregular hours, or constant exposure to artificial light can feel so deeply exhausting. We are fighting against an ancient clock that was never meant to be broken, and still, there is beauty in this design. The clock does not run with the cold precision of a machine. It has a softness and adaptability, like water flowing around stones in a stream. If you stay up late, the clock will try to adjust. If you travel far, it will eventually synchronize with the new sun. If you endure illness, it will guide the immune system to rise and fall in cycles of defense. The clock is not rigid. It is alive, shifting, responding, always seeking balance. To live with awareness of this clock is to live more gently. It is to know that the body has its own wisdom, that fatigue is not weakness but a message, that hunger at odd hours is not random but a ripple in the rhythm. It is to realize that sleep is not wasted time, but the most important work the inner clock performs, repairing, resetting, preparing you for another day in the endless symphony of time. Aging is the quietest chemistry of all. It does not burst into flames like combustion, nor does it fizz and bubble like a reaction in a beaker. Instead, it whispers. It works slowly, invisibly, rearranging the molecules of our lives in ways so subtle we hardly notice from one day to the next. And then, one morning, we catch ourselves in the mirror and see the work of time etched into the lines of our skin, in the silver of our hair, in the way our body moves a little slower than it once did. Aging is not simply decline, though we often think of it that way. It is alchemy, a transformation, a long unfolding of chemistry guided by time's patient hand. From the moment of birth, we are already aging. Even as a baby grows taller, stronger, learning to walk and speak, the cells are following the same script that will one day lead to wrinkles and frailty. Every heartbeat, every breath, every flicker of thought in the brain carries a small cost, an expenditure of energy that leaves behind tiny traces of wear. Molecules accumulate damage. Proteins misfold. DNA bears the marks of replication errors. These changes are so microscopic, you would need powerful instruments to even glimpse them. Yet over decades, they build into the grand transformation we call aging. One of the central players in this alchemy is oxygen. We breathe it to live, but with each breath, oxygen leaves behind reactive fragments known as free radicals. These unstable molecules ricochet through our cells, striking proteins, fats, and even our DNA. The body has defenses, antioxidants that neutralize these radicals, but no defense is perfect. Over time, the damage accumulates like scratches on glass. This process is known as oxidative stress, and though invisible, it is part of why skin loses elasticity, why organs grow less efficient, and why memory fades. The very element that fuels life also, in its slow way, erodes it. Another quiet sculptor of aging is telomeres. At the ends of every strand of DNA are protective caps, like the plastic tips at the ends of shoelaces, preventing the fragile coat of life from unraveling. Each time a cell divides, the telomeres shorten, just slightly, like the wick of a candle burning down. When they become too short, the cell can no longer divide safely, and it enters a state of rest, no longer renewing tissue. This is not failure, but biology's built-in clock, a mechanism to prevent errors from multiplying endlessly. Yet as more cells reach this state, the body's ability to repair itself weakens, and the signs of aging appear more clearly. Collagen, the protein that gives skin its firmness, is another witness to time's alchemy. In youth, collagen is abundant and flexible, holding skin smooth and resilient. But as years pass, collagen fibers stiffen, break, and regenerate more slowly. The skin becomes thinner, elastic, and wrinkles begin to form. What we call a wrinkle is simply the visible record of millions of tiny molecular changes, layered gently over decades. Hair, too, is transformed by chemistry. The pigment cells in hair follicles gradually cease their work, and strands lose their color, revealing the silver and white that were always waiting beneath. Inside the brain, the alchemy is even more mysterious. Neurons, unlike many other cells, do not readily divide. They must endure for a lifetime, and as years accumulate, they too gather scars. Proteins may clump, forming plaques. Communication between neurons slows. Memory does not vanish all at once but drifts away in fragments, like pages falling from an old book. And yet, the brain also adapts. New pathways can form, new connections can be made, even in old age. The chemistry of aging does not silence the mind. It simply changes its voice, trading speed and sharpness for wisdom, for patterns of thought, shaped by a lifetime of experience. The immune system is not immune to aging either. In youth, it is quick and fierce, leaping to defend against invaders. Over time, however, the immune response weakens, making the body more vulnerable to illness. But just as the defenses fade, so too does the overactive fire of inflammation. That in youth might cause fevers and strong reactions. Aging balances the extremes, dulling some edges while softening others. It is not destruction, but transformation. Even bones, which feel so solid, are not spared. They are living tissues, constantly broken down and rebuilt by cells called osteoclasts and osteoblasts. In youth, rebuilding is faster than breakdown, and bones grow denser. With age, breakdown begins to outpace renewal. The scaffolding weakens, the minerals thin, and fractures become easier. This too is chemistry, a shift in balance, a change in the invisible dialogue between cells. And yet, there is beauty in this alchemy. Aging does not simply erase, it creates. Think of the way wood darkens with years, gathering a richer color. Think of a river stone, polished smooth by time's patient touch. The lines on a human face are not only signs of loss, but also of stories lived, expressions repeated so many times that they leave their trace. Laughter carves its own pathways, just as worry does. The chemistry of aging is also the chemistry of memory, inscribed not only in the brain but on the body itself. It is worth remembering that aging is not unique to humans. Every living thing undergoes its own version of this alchemy. A tree adds rings to its trunk, each ring a record of years endured. A mountain erodes, its sharp edges softened into curves. Stars too have lifespans, burning their fuel until they fade or collapse, transforming into new forms. Aging is not a flaw of biology, but the natural rhythm of the universe, the way time transforms everything it touches. Some scientists search for ways to slow this process, to lengthen telomeres, to repair DNA, to combat oxidative stress, and perhaps they will succeed in extending life, in stretching the timeline of the body's clockwork. But even if we could stop every wrinkle, every gray hair, every faltering neuron, would we truly escape time's chemistry? For aging is not only in the body, but in the very passage of experience. To live is to change, to transform, to be sculpted by time. The alchemy cannot be separated from the story of life itself. What is remarkable is that while aging transforms the body, it often deepens the soul. Patience grows where once there was only urgency. Perspective widens where once there was only immediacy. Chemistry works upon our cells, but it also works upon our sense of meaning, slowing us, teaching us to savor, reminding us that life's richness is not measured by how long we last, but by how deeply we have been transformed. Memory is the closest thing we have to time made solid. It is the crystallization of moments that would otherwise vanish into the dark river of the past. Every day, thousands of experiences brush against us, and most dissolve, gone before we can even name them. Yet some remain. Some are gathered by the mind, shaped into structures, and stored within the hidden folds of the brain. These memories are like crystals grown from a solution of experience, fragile, luminous, and infinitely complex. They are the chemistry of time preserved. Inside the brain, memory does not exist in one single place. It is not a box on a shelf or a drawer that can be opened. Instead, it is scattered, distributed across networks of neurons, woven into electrical patterns and chemical bonds. When you recall a childhood afternoon, the sound of laughter, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the smell of grass, your brain is not pulling a photograph from a cabinet. It is reassembling pieces from different regions, sensory fragments, emotional tones, words, and images, each stored in separate neurons and linked by delicate connections. In that moment of recall, the brain recreates the experience, like light refracting through a crystal, giving shape to time once lived. This crystallization begins with something as simple as electrical sparks. When we experience an event, neurons fire in response, releasing chemicals called neurotransmitters. These signals leap across synapses, the tiny gaps between cells carrying information forward. If the event is important, or repeated, or charged with emotion, the synapses strengthen, proteins shift, receptors multiply, and the connection between neurons grows more enduring. This process is known as long-term potentiation, and it is the chemistry that allows memory to solidify. A fleeting moment becomes something more permanent, a crystal forming from the liquid of experience. Emotion is the great alchemist of memory. We do not remember every ordinary moment, every neutral day, but we remember the first time we fell in love, the day we lost someone, the shock of sudden joy or pain. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure in the brain, colors memories with emotion, signaling that these are important, these must be preserved. It is why trauma can linger sharp and unyielding, while routine days slip quietly away. Time does not crystallize evenly. It chooses certain drops of experience to freeze, leaving the rest to flow past. And yet, memory is not perfect crystal. It is not a flawless diamond, but more like glass, transparent, fragile, and easily warped. Each time we recall a memory, we do not simply replay it, we rebuild it, reshaping the connections, influenced by new experiences and emotions. What we believe to be a faithful record of the past is often an evolving story, changing with each retelling. In this way, memory is both crystallized time and liquid time, solid yet malleable, enduring yet unstable. The chemistry of memory is alive, constantly reshaping the very crystals it forms. Think of childhood memories. They shine brightly, often more vivid than the events of yesterday. The brain of a child is uniquely plastic, able to form new connections with astonishing speed. Experiences sink deeply, leaving impressions that last a lifetime. A song heard in youth can stir feelings decades later, because the crystal was formed at a time when the mind was most receptive. As we age, the brain becomes less plastic, less quick to form new connections, but the old crystals remain, carried with us like treasures in a hidden chest. Sleep plays a vital role in this crystallization. During the night, as the body rests, the brain is far from idle. It replays patterns of activity, strengthening certain connections, pruning others. Dreams, strange and surreal as they seem, may be part of this process, weaving together fragments of memory, testing combinations, and integrating new experiences with old. By morning, some memories are hardened, crystallized, while others are erased, swept away to make room for what is yet to come. Sleep is the laboratory where time becomes solid, where experience is transformed into the lasting crystals of memory. But memory is more than biology. It is identity. Who we are is shaped not only by our genes or our chemistry, but by the collection of moments we have carried forward. Our first words, our first steps, our first heartbreaks, these crystallized times, form the architecture of the self. Remove memory, and the self begins to dissolve. This is why diseases like Alzheimer's feel so devastating, not only to the person who suffers but to those who love them. It is not just that memories are lost, it is that time itself is erased, the crystals shattered, leaving only fragments. And yet, there is a strange mercy in the imperfection of memory. Because it is malleable, because it can be reshaped, memory allows healing. Painful events may soften over time, their sharp edges smoothed by the brain's gentle rewriting. Joyful memories can be brightened, polished, made more beautiful in recollection than they were in reality. In this way, memory is not only a record of time, but also a creative force, sculpting the past into something the present can bear. Nature, too, has its memories. Trees remember seasons in their rings, Glaciers remember centuries in their layers of ice, and the earth remembers eons in its stones and fossils. These too are crystallizations of time, preserved not in neurons, but in matter itself. When we study a fossil, we are peering into time's memory, held for millions of years in stone. When we drill into ice cores and read the trapped bubbles of ancient air, we are listening to Earth's recollections. In a way, all of existence carries memory, all of it crystallized in some form, whether in brain tissue, wood grain, or the shifting orbits of the stars. Perhaps that is why memory feels sacred. It is not simply a chemical process, though it is chemistry that makes it possible. It is the way time resists complete disappearance. It is how a moment, once gone, can still be touched again, even if only faintly, even if imperfectly. Memory is proof that the past is not entirely lost, that time can be preserved in delicate structures within us. Each memory is a crystal, but together they form a mosaic, a shimmering architecture of time that defines our lives. When you close your eyes and think of a face you have loved, or a place you once walked, or a sound that made you feel alive, you are touching the crystallized form of time itself. It is fragile, yes, but it is also luminous. It glows within you, carrying the past into the present, shaping who you are, and guiding who you will become. There is a deep tension between the way nature moves through time, and the way human beings demand it to move. Time itself has no urgency. It does not rush. It does not hesitate. It does not falter. It flows, patient as the stars, steady as the tides. But humans, with their fragile bodies and restless minds, live as if every moment must be captured, accelerated, pressed into productivity. We are creatures who have tried to measure, divide, and conquer time, while nature simply embodies it, unhurried and vast. The result is a constant struggle, the slow patience of time, and the fevered urgency of human life. When we look at the natural world, patience is everywhere. A seed does not demand to become a tree overnight. It lies dormant, in the soil, waiting for warmth, for moisture, for the right conditions to unfold. Years may pass before it reaches its full height, and decades before it bears fruit. Mountains rise not in days, but in millions of years, lifted by the steady push of tectonic plates. Rivers carve valleys grain by grain, drop by drop, wearing stone into canyons through persistence alone. Even the stars, blazing and immense, live out their lives across billions of years. To time, a century is only a moment, a millennium only a blank. The universe is patient because it must be. Humans, however, are not born with the same rhythm. Our lives are short compared to the vast cycles of the cosmos. We measure our existence in decades, not in eons. From the moment we are old enough to understand time, we are aware of its limits. Childhood feels endless until suddenly it does not. Youth feels immortal until it begins to slip. The awareness of mortality presses upon us, and from that pressure comes urgency. We hurry because we fear. We build clocks, calendars, alarms, deadlines, and timetables to divide what we have left, as though numbers could make the flow less frightening. And yet, in our rush, we often miss what time is offering. Consider the way we treat growth. A child wants to be an adult quickly, to leap past the slowness of learning and waiting. Adults, in turn, rush through careers, through milestones, through achievements, always chasing the next thing. We treat time like a resource to be extracted, squeezed for every drop of efficiency. But time is not oil in the ground, nor gold in the earth. It cannot be mine. It can only be lived, moment by moment. In our urgency, we forget the patience of time, and we exhaust ourselves fighting against something that cannot be rushed. Nature offers endless reminders that slowness is not waste. Coral reefs take centuries to build their dazzling structures, millimeter by millimeter. A pearl forms inside an oyster grain by grain, layer upon layer, until at last it gleams. The Grand Canyon was not carved by a single flood, but by countless years of a river's persistence. What humans call slow, time calls natural. What we call urgent, time does not recognize at all. The clash between patience and urgency shows itself most clearly in modern life. Technology promises to accelerate everything: communication, travel, production, even thought. We demand instant answers, instant results, instant gratification, but the body still moves to its ancient rhythm. Muscles require time to strengthen, wounds require time to heal, minds require time to rest. No amount of urgency can make the chemistry of life move faster than it is meant to. When we push too hard, the result is exhaustion, illness, burnout. Our inner clock resists our attempts to compress it. The orchestra of the body cannot play at double speed without losing its harmony. There is wisdom in learning from time's patience. To wait is not to waste, though urgency often tells us otherwise. Waiting allows seeds to sprout, ideas to grow, relationships to deepen. It allows the invisible chemistry of change to unfold without force. Patience is not the absence of action. It is action aligned with the rhythm of time. To move with time instead of against it is to discover a different kind of productivity, one measured not in speed, but in depth. Think of love, for example. It cannot be rushed. Affection may spark quickly, but trust, intimacy, understanding, these grow slowly, like roots sinking deep into the earth. Think of wisdom. Knowledge may be acquired in a single lecture, but wisdom comes from years of living, of testing, of failing and learning again. Think of art. A painting may be completed in hours, but the vision behind it may take years to form. Time's patience does not deny creation. It enriches it, ensuring that what is made has depth, texture, and endurance. Even in suffering, time teaches patience. Grief does not vanish in a day, no matter how urgently we wish it would. Healing, whether of the body or the heart, requires the slow chemistry of repair. Cells knit themselves together quietly, molecules realign, scars form. The mind, too, needs time to rearrange its memories, to soften pain, to find new paths forward. Urgency wants to skip this process, to leap over the ache, but time knows better. It heals at its own pace, unhurried, but steady. In many ways, the urgency of humanity has created wonders. It has built cities, discovered medicines, sent rockets to the stars. Our impatience drives innovation, and our short lives give us reason to act quickly. But even in these achievements, we remain subject to time's patience. The buildings we erect crumble without maintenance. The medicines we invent work because they align with the body's slow chemistry. The rockets we send rely on the patient laws of gravity and motion. For all our speed, we still move within time's rhythm. Perhaps the secret is not to eliminate urgency, but to balance it with patience. There are moments when urgency is necessary, when danger strikes, when opportunity knocks, when action must be taken without delay. But these moments are exceptions, not the rule. The rest of life is better served by the slow, steady rhythm of time. To live entirely in urgency is to live in constant conflict with the universe, but to live with patience is to live in harmony with it. When you sit quietly, listening to your own heartbeat, you are hearing time's patience. It does not rush. It does not skip. It keeps rhythm, steady and calm. The breath you take, the rise and fall of your chest, is the same rhythm your ancestors breathed, and the same rhythm that future generations will breathe. Time is not in a hurry, because it does not need to be. The stars are still burning. The earth is still turning. The river is still flowing. And life continues. Not because of urgency, but because of patience. In the end, the contrast between human urgency and time's patience is not a battle to be won. It is a relationship to be understood. Urgency reminds us of our limits, that life is brief, that opportunities must sometimes be seized. Patience reminds us of the vastness beyond those limits, that life is also enduring, that growth requires slowness. Together, they shape the way we live. Caught between the brevity of our years and the infinity of time's flow, time does not change its pace. The seconds do not lengthen or shorten. The hours do not drift quicker or slower. A clock's ticking remains steady, indifferent to our feelings. And yet, for us, time rarely feels steady. A childhood summer seems endless, stretching like an ocean of afternoons. But adulthood weeks vanish in a blink, slipping through our fingers like water. A moment of fear can expand into an eternity, while a moment of joy can disappear almost before we can hold it. Time itself is constant, but our perception of it is not. What we live through is not the truth of time's speed, but the illusion of it. This illusion begins in the brain. Perception of time is not measured by an external clock, but by internal chemistry. Neurons fire, signals are transmitted, and the brain creates a sense of duration based on patterns of activity. When life is novel, when each day presents something new, the brain works harder, storing more information, laying down more memories. Because the density of memory is greater, the time that holds it feels longer. This is why childhood seems to stretch endlessly. Every sound, every color, every taste is new, and the brain captures it all in fine detail. Each day is packed with crystallized moments, and so the days feel vast. As we age, novelty fades. We recognize patterns. We grow accustomed to routines. We cease to notice the small details. The brain records less, compressing more experience into fewer memories. The weeks seem shorter, not because the hours have changed, but because the mind has not marked them as vividly. This is the illusion of speed in adulthood. Time is not moving faster, but our perception of it has grown sparse, leaving long stretches of life to feel compressed. Emotion can distort time even more dramatically. When the body is flooded with adrenaline, as in fear or danger, the brain's chemistry sharpens awareness. Each fraction of a second is examined, remembered, held. A fall, an accident, a sudden shock may feel like it lasts forever, because the brain has expanded the moment with heightened perception. Conversely, joy can make time vanish. Laughter, love, flow states of creativity, or play, all of these quiet the awareness of time, leaving only the experience itself. Hours pass unnoticed, and when we return to the clock, we are startled by how quickly it has gone. This contrast between terror and delight reveals the illusion clearly. The speed of time belongs not to time itself, but to the mind interpreting it. The illusion extends to larger spans of life. Ask an older person about the passing of decades, and many will say it feels like no time at all. The first 20 years of life seem as long as the next 40, not because the latter are shorter, but because they are filled with fewer novel imprints. The brain, having already learned how to navigate the world, stores less newness, and the past seems compressed. Time speeds by not because it changes, but because the chemistry of attention and memory changes. Culture, too, shapes the illusion. In some societies, life is slower, daily rhythms aligned with the rising and setting of the sun, with work done patiently, meals eaten gradually, conversations lingering. In such lives, time may feel expansive, unhurried. In other societies, where schedules are tight, technology accelerates communication, and every moment is filled with activity, time feels scarce, always fleeing. Yet the clocks are the same. The difference is in perception, in the way the human mind has been trained to attend to the world. Technology, in particular, magnifies the illusion of speed. Messages sent instantly, news flashing from across the globe, entertainment consumed in bursts of seconds. These compress our sense of time. We scroll through dozens of moments in a single minute, but because none are deeply stored, none expand in memory, the minutes collapse into nothing. Paradoxically, the faster we live, the less time we seem to have, because we do not allow the chemistry of experience to crystallize into lasting memory. Speed itself becomes an illusion, creating the sensation that time is slipping away. Dreams reveal the illusion in yet another way. A dream may seem to last for hours, filled with events, conversations, landscapes, and journeys. But when we wake, we discover that only minutes have passed in the outside world. The brain, in dreams, is unbound from the strict ticking of clocks, and time becomes elastic, able to stretch or compress at will. This shows us clearly that our sense of duration is not fixed but constructed, a fragile artifact of neural chemistry. There is also the curious phenomenon of anticipation versus recollection. Waiting for something, especially in boredom, makes Time crawl. Minutes feel like hours when we sit in silence with nothing to do. Yet once the event has passed, once the waiting is over, the period seems to have been short. Memory compresses it, erasing the slowness, leaving behind only a thin trace. The reverse is true of rich, joyful times. They pass quickly in the moment, but in memory, they expand, because they left behind a wealth of impressions. Time feels slow when we live it without engagement, but it feels full when we look back upon it if we have filled it with meaning. The illusion of speed is not merely a curiosity of perception. It shapes our lives profoundly. It is why youth feels endless and old age fleeting. It is why we look back upon decades with disbelief, wondering how quickly they passed. It is why we often feel a hunger to slow down, to capture moments more deeply, to resist the rushing current. What we seek in these desires is not to change time itself, but to change our experience of it, to enrich the chemistry of perception so that the illusion softens. There are ways to do this. Mindfulness, though it has become a common word, is, in essence, the art of paying attention. When we notice details, when we breathe deeply, when we look closely at the ordinary, the brain records more, and the moment expands. Travel often feels long not because the plane moves differently, but because the new sights, sounds, and smells flood the brain with novelty. A week in a new place feels longer than a month at home, because the memories are denser. In this way, perception of time can be stretched, not by altering the clock, but by altering the mind's chemistry of attention. Children remind us of this truth. They stare at insects, at clouds, at puddles, as though each one is a universe. Their brains are flooded with novelty, and so their days are immense. To live like a child, even briefly, is to resist the illusion of speed, to let time regain its true vastness. Adults forget, not because time has changed, but because urgency and familiarity have blinded them to detail. And yet, even with these tricks of perception, the illusion never fully dissolves. Time will always feel uneven, expanding and contracting, in ways beyond our control. It is part of being human, part of living with a brain that measures time not by the impartial ticking of atoms, but by the shifting rhythms of chemistry and memory. What feels fast or slow is not the universe itself, but the echo of our own awareness, reflected back to us through the fragile mirror of the mind. When you close your eyes at night, when the weight of the day begins to dissolve, and the mind slips beneath the surface of waking thought, you enter a hidden laboratory. It is a place without clocks, a place where the normal laws of hours and minutes lose their grip. This is the realm of dreams, where time itself is not rigid but fluid, elastic, malleable. Dreams are time's secret experiment, a nightly reminder that what we call reality is filtered not only through the senses, but also through the strange chemistry of the brain. In waking life, the second hand ticks forward, and we accept its authority. But in dreams, seconds stretch into eternities, and eternities collapse into flashes. You may drift to sleep and find yourself in a city you have never visited, walking down endless streets, conversing with strangers who feel familiar, all while a story unfolds that seems to last hours. And yet, when you awaken, only a few minutes have passed. This is the paradox of dreamtime, the bending of chronology into a shape that waking reason cannot explain. It is here in this hidden space that we see most clearly that time is not absolute but experienced, sculpted by the mind's own rhythms. Scientists have studied this mystery, trying to measure dream duration against clock time. In sleep laboratories, they ask dreamers to perform simple actions within dreams, like counting or moving their eyes, and then compare the length of the action with the minutes on the clock outside. The findings are curious. Often, dreams unfold much faster than waking experience, condensing what feels like hours into moments. But sometimes, they stretch beyond the clock, making seconds feel like long journeys. The conclusion is not one of precision but of variability. Time in dreams is not a straight road, but a river that flows in unpredictable directions. Why does this happen? The chemistry of dreaming offers a clue. When the body enters rapid eye movement sleep, or REM sleep, the brain becomes highly active, almost as if awake. Yet the chemistry of neurotransmitters is altered. perception is unanchored, and memory circuits behave differently. This altered state creates a playground where narrative, imagination, and emotion collide without the normal guardrails of waking time. The brain, deprived of its usual tether to external cues, invents its own measure of duration, free from the ticking of a clock on the wall. Dreams often bend not only time but also space. A single dream may transport you from one place to another without any sense of travel. You stand in one room, and suddenly, you are elsewhere, as if time and distance never existed. In waking life, movement requires minutes, but in dream life, it requires nothing but thought. This reveals how deeply time is tied to perception. Without the anchors of walking, waiting, or watching the sun move across the sky, time becomes less of a line and more of a canvas, painted freely by the dreaming mind. Memory plays its part here too. In waking life, we remember events sequentially, one after another, creating the feeling of time passing in order. But in dreams, memory can fragment, overlap, and fold. A dream may seem to begin in the middle of a story, or it may leap backward without warning, blending past and present into a single scene. The illusion of a timeline is broken, and we are left adrift in an ocean of shifting moments. This is why dreams often feel both endless and fleeting. They are not constrained by the chemistry that makes waking memory linear. Emotion is another key. In dreams, emotions are heightened, exaggerated, and unfiltered. Fear can magnify a moment until it feels like forever. A dream of falling may last only seconds in clock time, but in the dream, it feels stretched across vast spans. Conversely, joy or intimacy in a dream can collapse time, making long dream narratives seem to pass in the blink of an eye. These emotional amplifications shape the way the brain encodes the experience, and thus shape the sense of time itself. Dreams also give us glimpses of how time could feel if it were not so rigid. In lucid dreams, where the dreamer becomes aware they are dreaming, time can sometimes be manipulated consciously. Dreamers describe slowing events, repeating them, or extending them at will. To realize that one is dreaming is to realize that the clock is no longer master. In this state, the illusion of time becomes an open experiment, a field in which the dreamer may play with duration as freely as with shape or color. But what purpose does this laboratory of dreamtime serve? One idea is that it allows the brain to rehearse, to simulate, to process. By bending time, dreams can compress long rehearsals into short periods, preparing the body and mind for waking challenges. Another idea is that it allows emotional processing, stretching moments of fear or grief so that they can be examined, dissolved, or integrated. In either case, the flexibility of time is not random, but may serve the deeper function of healing and adaptation. Consider also how dreams blur the boundaries between past, present, and future. You may dream of a childhood home while speaking with people from your current life. You may dream of a future possibility, an imagined path, or a fear not yet realized. In this way, dreamtime is not linear at all but layered. The brain pulls from memory, imagination, and anticipation all at once, weaving them into a tapestry outside of time's strict order. What results is not a timeline but a mosaic, where moments coexist in ways they never could in waking life. In mythology and philosophy, dreams have long been seen as portals to timelessness. Ancient cultures believed dreams connected humans to divine realms, where time flowed differently. Modern science may explain dreams in terms of neurons and neurotransmitters, but the experience of dreamtime remains just as mysterious as it was to the ancients. To lie in bed and, within minutes, live through a saga of hours is to glimpse that time is not as simple as we think. And so, each night, as we drift into dreams, we enter that hidden laboratory where time experiments with us. It shows us that duration is not fixed, that seconds can be stretched, that hours can be condensed, that beginnings and endings can fold into one another. It is here that we see most clearly the illusion of control we hold over time in waking life. For in dreams, time belongs not to the clock, but to the mind, and the mind bends it as freely as it bends light or shadow. Time is often painted as a thief. It takes away our youth. It erases our moments. It pulls people and places further into the distance. We feel it pressing against us like a shadow we cannot outrun. We look in the mirror and see its gentle fingerprints. We glance at the calendar and watch entire seasons fold and disappear. And so, many of us live at war with time, rushing against it, resisting it, fearing its passage. But what if the truth is quieter, more delicate? What if time is not an enemy, but a slow chemistry, a process as natural as rain falling on soil, as leaves turning toward autumn? To find peace in this slow chemistry is to learn to live in harmony with change, to embrace the unfolding of moments as part of a larger, invisible rhythm. When you think of chemistry, you might imagine test tubes bubbling, sparks, reactions quick and dramatic. But most of the chemistry that governs life is slow. Rust spreading across iron, minerals crystallizing in caves, seeds breaking down soil into nutrients, the patient work of enzymes building and unbuilding the molecules of your body. These transformations rarely call attention to themselves. They happen quietly, steadily, with the patience that stretches beyond our hurried sense of urgency. Time itself works in the same way. It is not a sudden burst, but a patient process. A mountain is carved not in days, but in millennia. A human life is shaped not in hours, but across decades. To understand time as chemistry is to understand it as a reaction that moves at its own speed, never rushed, never late. And yet, as humans, we measure time in ways that make it feel harsh. We divide it into units, minutes and hours, days and years, numbers we can count, tally, and fear. We compare how much of it we have with how much we imagine we need. We run, we chase, we hurry. But the body, like nature, still responds to time in its original slow chemistry. The cells of your skin renew themselves in quiet cycles. Your bones exchange old minerals for new over years. The heart learns, adapts, remembers through changes so gradual they are invisible to you in the moment. To see yourself as part of this slow chemistry is to step back from the ticking clock and instead lean into a deeper rhythm, the rhythm of being alive. Finding peace with time means loosening our grip on control. It means accepting that not everything can be rushed, that the most meaningful processes unfold gradually. Think of healing. A cut on your skin does not vanish overnight. It closes, rebuilds, knits together over days. The body knows this rhythm, and the mind must learn it too. Think of love. True bonds are not formed in a single moment, but through countless shared seconds, built gently, layer upon layer, like sediment forming rock. Think of wisdom. Knowledge may come quickly, but wisdom ripens slowly, deepening only through the accumulation of years. The chemistry of time is gentle but deliberate, and peace comes when we learn to trust its pace. Consider how a tree grows. In its first years, it is fragile, bending easily, small enough to be overlooked. But year by year, ring by ring, it gathers strength. To stand beside an old tree is to stand beside centuries of slow chemistry, matter transformed into wood, light, turned into branches, air into leaves. The tree does not worry about its age. It simply grows, patiently, in harmony with seasons. To find peace with time is to see yourself as a tree, shaped slowly, layer upon layer, not rushed but ripened. One of the greatest sources of human anxiety is the feeling that time is running out. Deadlines, age, unfulfilled dreams, they all whisper that time is scarce, that we must hurry. But the truth is that time, like chemistry, does not vanish. It transforms. The moments you feel are lost are not destroyed. They are dissolved into memory, into influence, into change. A childhood moment of joy may still echo in your laughter today. A past difficulty may still shape your strength. Nothing is gone. It is transformed. To find peace with time is to see loss, not as erasure, but as transmutation, the way coal becomes diamond, or carbon becomes life. Peace also comes when we let go of comparison. We look at others and measure their timeline against our own. Someone else has achieved more by a certain age. Someone else looks younger. Someone else seems further along. But chemistry does not work on a schedule of comparison. Each reaction has its own rate, its own path. Some substances change quickly, others take centuries. To compare one with another is meaningless. The same is true of lives. To find peace with time is to recognize that your rhythm, your pace, is your own. You cannot rush the chemistry of your becoming. Time teaches patience, but it also teaches presence. The more we chase the future, the more time slips away, not because it moves faster, but because we are not there to experience it. When we dwell in the past or strain toward the future, the present dissolves unnoticed. But when we pause, when we breathe, when we immerse ourselves fully in a single moment, time slows, minutes expand, and we see the richness hidden in what seems ordinary. A cup of tea, a walk under trees, the sound of rain on the window, all of these moments reveal that peace is not found in fighting time, but in entering it deeply, without resistance. Even science reflects this truth. Studies on mindfulness show that attention alters the perception of time. When the mind is focused and present, time feels fuller, slower, more abundant. When the mind is distracted, time feels rushed and scarce. The chemistry of the brain mirrors this. Neurotransmitters shift, perception alters, and the flow of moments is experienced differently. Peace, then, is not about adding more hours to life, but about changing the way those hours are experienced. Aging, too, becomes softer when seen as chemistry instead of tragedy. Every wrinkle, every strand of gray hair, is not simply a mark of loss, but a record of transformation. Just as minerals leave patterns in stone, time leaves patterns in us. To find peace in this is to see beauty in change, to honor the evidence of life lived, of years transformed into presence, memory, and depth. We are not diminishing with time. We are evolving, refining, becoming more intricate, like wine that matures in casks or wood that deepens in color. In the end, finding peace in the slow chemistry of time is about trust. Trust that life unfolds at its own pace, that change is natural, that moments do not disappear but transform. Trust that you too, part of this vast chemistry, your body, your mind, your memories, all moving within its gentle current. It is not something to fight, but something to surrender to breathe with, to flow alongside. Time is not a thief, but a patient alchemist, turning experience into wisdom, turning fleeting moments into the substance of who we are. So, dear listener, we have wandered through the invisible corridors of time together. We have seen how it is not a clock that ticks, but a chemistry that flows quiet, patient, and steady. We began with the thought that time is an unseen element, shaping us even though it cannot be touched or measured on the periodic table. We explored how our bodies keep their own rhythm, how our cells and circadian cycles dance with the sun and the dark. We reflected on aging as a kind of alchemy, not sudden loss but transformation, rust shaping wine deepening in richness with age. We looked at memory, those delicate crystallizations of time, fragments preserved like glass holding light, fragile, and precious. We examined the tension between time's patience and our urgency, how nature embraces slowness while we race against invisible deadlines. We asked why time feels faster as we grow older, discovering that perception itself is a chemistry shifting. As the brain changes, we even stepped into dreams, where time bends and stretches, reminding us that what we feel as reality is woven by the mind's own alchemy. And finally, we arrived at the heart of it, the invitation to find peace in this slow chemistry, to stop wrestling with time as if it were an enemy, and instead to lean into its flow, to see in every wrinkle not a loss, but a record of transformation, in every memory not absence, but presence preserved, in every passing season not a thief, but an artist at work. The slow chemistry of time is not here to frighten us. It is here to cradle us, to remind us that change is natural, that growth is patient, that nothing is wasted. To make peace with time is to see yourself as part of this greater process, like rivers shaping valleys, like starlight traveling across centuries, like trees forming their silent rings. And so, as we close this journey, may you carry this thought gently. Time is not running away. It is unfolding, moment by moment, transforming everything it touches into something new. And within its chemistry, you two are unfolding, becoming, and deepening exactly as you were meant to.